This is Big Mac, the Week in Conspiracy. We're here with a good friend of the show, an interesting fellow to say the least. I've been reading his book over the last couple of days. It is fascinating. His new book, I believe, is The Dimensional Ecology of the Omniverse. Alfred Webre. Alfred is a Yale University Law School graduate. He's taught economics at Yale University, taught constitutional law at the University of Texas. Wow, that was an interesting place to teach. A general counsel, New York City Environmental Protection Agency. We won't hold that against him. Futurist at Stanford Research Institute. Carter at White. I mean, just a plethora of stuff. I can't go through all this stuff. It's so interesting. Sir, welcome to Week in Conspiracy. How you doing tonight?
Thanks, Len. Good. Well, thank you very much. I'm very happy to be here.
Yeah, I really look forward to talking with you. You know, this what exactly is a futurist to start off with? I mean, what's your definition of that?
Well, it's an interdisciplinary and, in the best case, interdimensional profession that is a forecaster and a policymaker, not on a single timeline, but across multiple timelines, so that one could say, in a typical case, make energy policy for the next 50 years, say, but by really getting into what, say, 2064 is really going to be like. And that includes talking to people who have time travel there, talking to interdimensional ETs who are now visiting here, who have been there, talking to ETs from similar planets or dimensions like ours, or from more advanced dimensions who have sort of a caretaker role, and who can tell us a great deal about what our future is going to be. And so we go to being a futurist is kind of a frontier science where we go to places that a lot of money is spent to convince the public that there doesn't exist. You can't get there from here. But if we're good futurists, and if we do our job, that's exactly what we do. We find out sources that are now being prohibited from the public mind, and we also go into sources that have not been thought of before, and we compile them and we bring them to the public for their edification, or for the public mind to kind of, think about.
Yeah, so I didn't mention your website. Sometimes I'm a poor host, but I'm not a professional.
No, you're fine.
Exopolitics.com.
Yeah.
I've heard about that website for years. I've visited numerous times. I've seen it cited on many other shows. You've got a lot of interesting information out there.
Thank you.
Let's talk about this article. This from the blog there, an exercise in the Socratic method and the positive timeline. Putin is savior or deceiver, and why does it matter? We were just having a conversation there a few minutes ago about Russia and America, and them, Russia paying off its debt. And I was kind of arguing the fact that Putin may be in trouble over there just because the people aren't happy with him. Maybe they're not feeling the benefit of his paying off the debt. Whereas we're fat and happy here in America, but we're deep in debt.
Yeah.
What's your position? I mean, this is a fascinating thing about it's got a lot of information there about the Antichrist and things like that.
Yeah.
Give us a rundown of this.
Yeah, no, sure. This is actually an article that grew out of a one-line kind of post that I did to my Facebook page early today, in which I said, "Oh my God, Putin could be Obama's handler." And that has created such a fuss on a number of websites that over the course of the day, people would say, Alfred, are you sure that your account has not been hacked? I mean, this is just does not make sense. And so I I had to create this post just to work out the logic in it, and it's a little bit kind of arcane with twists and turns, but it brings to the surface many of the different factors that are working underneath the Russian American world relationship now, and exactly who Putin is, and exactly who the entity that now occupies the White House that is known as Barack Obama. People can go to exopolitics.com, and in this article we have placed links to everything, including a PowerPoint in which we show how the Manchurian candidate named Barack Obama, that is not his legal name. In fact, he changed his name from a CIA name that they gave him in 1982 called Barack Munid Ubaid. He changed it right in front of a judge in Skakumchik, British Columbia here on October 15th, 1982, to Barack Hussein Obama as part of an elaborate cover exercise that they were even back then setting up Obama to be a future president. And there's a lot of learning that goes into the fact that this was a long-term Russian, Soviet / CIA / Illuminati plot to put a Russian Illuminati agent in office as president, namely Obama, who would be handled by the Russians. And that's the best way to bring down the United States. And all you have to do is look around you, and you can see that the social fabric of the United States in many, many different areas, from infant mortality to literacy to real wages to the industrial base, has just shrunk ever since Obama has been there. And this is no accident, because this has been a long-term objective of this network, whereby the Vietnam War was even a plot to get the United States enmeshed in a nonsensical war, and the real objective was to addict the urban underclasses, the African American, the poor white youth, and the youth, to hard drugs, to heroin and other hard drugs from what they called the Golden Triangle in the Vietnam and Cambodia area. And all that was being flown back by the CIA. That's an instrumentality, really, of the Rockefeller Rothschilds. They're just the bag people for the Illuminati. And so the whole purpose of the Vietnam War, or one of the principal purposes, was to fly these drugs from there back into the United States. That's where the Bushes got their start as major drug dealers, and to bring them into the inner cities to sap the strength. The British had done a similar thing to bring down the China and the Chinese Empire with what they call the Opium War. And I know that this was true because in 1969, at the time of the Vietnam War, I was a Wall Street lawyer. The firm that I worked for handled many accounts, among which was Pan American Airways, which had the contract to bring back the body bags of the dead GIs. There were 50,000 dead GIs that had to be brought back. And the way that the CIA got the heroin back was in the body bags. And I was a lawyer on the account, along with other accounts. I represented Pan American Airways. And during the weekends and at night, I would, be reading all this stuff and see that my clients, because I used to read all of the alternative press, and I would see that my clients were really just bringing over heroin as part of the CIA. So that's what led me to leave Wall Street, was precisely that. So I've understood that geopolitics is not at all what it seems to be. And what triggered off this article for me and this proposition was an article that I read today that Nostradamus, who was a very gifted psychic, who could do remote viewing, he predicted two individuals as what he called the second and third antichrists. Now, the word antichrist is kind of in a strange term. It could be antichrist, like against Christ, but it could also mean anti, A-N-T-E, meaning coming before Christ. The archetype seems to be a militaristic conqueror reformer. And that fits the personality that Nostradamus predicted and stated was the second Antichrist, who was Napoleon, who was very much of a militaristic conqueror reformer in his day, who brought the Napoleonic Code. That was a great reform and kind of justice for the common man in his native country of France. In fact, if you go to Louisiana in the U.S., where my father's family's from, they've been down in St. James Parish since the early 1700s. You'll find that the Napoleonic Code is still the law of the land there. And the same thing with Putin. Putin, in some circles, is thought to be very much a man of the people. He is now signed into law, and I had people write me, tell me about this, that in 1994, Yeltsin signed a law giving 30 million Russian citizens free land. In 1999, 35 million citizens supplied 54% of the nation's food in 110 growing days from this land. And in 1996, Putin signed into law that people no longer need to claim their land, that it will not be taxed, and that they can keep their land and pass it on to their kin. So that there's this great kind of savior mode that Putin has in him, and it's kind of visionary in his most recent moves, for example, with the BRICS Bank, to be in direct competition with the Rothschild led Western faction that's behind the Federal Reserve, that's about as federal as Federal Express, not to insult that company, but the Federal Reserve Bank, which Woodrow Wilson, who signed the law into effect in 1913, said that it was the most regretful thing that he had ever done, that he knew that he had sold the American people into slavery. And what happened, and many of your listeners know this, but for those who don't, was that Rothschild sent agents over from the 13 families bloodline families of the City of London bankers who now run both City of London and Wall Street and are very familiar names. They incited the bank panic of 1908, which is problem, reaction, solution. And then everybody said, we need a new central bank, but they didn't want the U.S. to use the power of the Constitution, which was inherent in the Constitution, where the Treasury has its own power to be its own central bank and issue its own currency on the full faith and credit of the U.S., so that private bankers don't have any point going in there and charging interest, lending money to a country to print its own currency. So they had the fix on a vulnerable president of Princeton University who was having an adulterous affair, Woodrow Wilson, and because Theodore Roosevelt was splitting the vote with the Bull Moose Party, Wilson won, and in the Christmas break of that year, they passed the Federal Reserve Act, the creature of Jekyll Island, which in essence gave private banks, all of which were beneficially owned by the Rothschild family or members of the 13 families, gave the entire economy of the United States power over its economy to this private consortium of banks, so that the U.S., which in its Constitution had the power to print its own currency, now gave that over to the Rothschild family and its family of banks, its close knit, like cousins, and the United States then had to pay interest to them to print its own dollar bill. So it was like a license for the Rothschilds to make money. And then through various arrangements after World War II, they brought in the income tax in the U.S. without any arrangements. So that became a further drain on the U.S. that went direct into the coffers of the Rothschilds to run the government. And then they made the U.S. dollar, namely the Rothschilds' private currency, the world currency, through the Bretton Woods Agreement after World War II, and then tied it to the price of petroleum, which was the resource that the Rothschild-Rockefeller war crimes racketeering organization owned worldwide. So that's been the current circumstance to the present. So the BRICS countries, through Putin and China, India, and South Africa, have now formed another a competing banking system that is intended, number one, to break this monopoly by moving away from the petrodollar, or the monopoly that the U.S. dollars have on the exchange for gold, for oil, for oil, number one, and number two, they also have brought in a very worrisome figure, and that figure is the head of the Vatican. And the Vatican, since the secret Treaty of Verona in the 1700s, has been the secret ruler of rulers of all nations on the planet, and the secret banker of all bankers on the planet. And so it's as though now the Vatican is playing both sides. The Vatican, through the Jesuits, run the United States and the Western powers. And now, because of the alliance with Putin and the Jesuit Pope, they are also becoming the bankers of the of the BRICS. So the question is, and they're also doing one other thing, and that is moving away from fiat currencies, which is where there does not have to be any real asset backing the currency. Rather, private banks merely take your signature and create money out of digits on their computers and then earn interest on it. And now what we understand is that the various BRICS basket of currencies will be asset-backed in terms of gold. China is the largest gold owner in the world, and Russia, has gold mines, and so that'll probably be a backer there. However, for those of us who are interested in what we call unity consciousness, which is we are one, as opposed to duality consciousness, which is I win, you lose, this prior period of history, up to December 21st, 2012, and people can go to positivefuture.info and see a 27-page paper as to why we can delineate a shift in the actual timeline that we're in. The holographic timeline that we're in shifted, and we now seem to be ruled by a different equation, by a different timeline that seems to favor more activities and people who are in unity consciousness rather than duality consciousness. So
let me jump in there
sorry.
for a second. That's an interesting thing. We've led up here. We've got this whole consortium of evil, looks like, out there trying to bring in this one world order. And then you've got this philosophy of unity consciousness. Is that not one and the same with the global government that we're talking about, or is that something that's separated?
No, because I would say that the essence of unity consciousness is that it is based on the individual sovereignty of the human soul. The human soul is the basic unit under unity consciousness. Whereas if you look at any of the different models for the New World Order, it's the order that rules over the collective. And so it's the collective wins over the individual. And that's been my experience of all of the experiences that I've had under communism. I lived in Cuba under communism for a while. And I produced the first live radio broadcast between the United States and the Soviet Union in history in 1987. It was called the Instant of Cooperation, which is broadcast over the National Public Radio satellite in the US and through Goslar Radio over all 11 time zones in Russia, in the Soviet Union. And through that, I was invited to go to the Soviet Union to meet Gorbachev, who is a colleague of Putin's. And so I didn't go because for various reasons, but I know a lot of his cadres. Putin was KGB in West Germany at the same time that the current premier of Germany, was a member of the Stasi. So they used to deal with each other when they were both in the communist world. And so what I put out for open discussion was to see a working hypothesis. This is just an open theory, because I think that it's very important to put world leaders through a test to see if they're actually a savior or a deceiver. And it was suggested in an article that Nostradamus had predicted Putin as the third Antichrist in the same way that he predicted Nostradamus as the second Antichrist. Now, what does it matter? People say, look, people are losing their lives in the Ukraine. The world financial system is about to go down. What does it really matter? Well, in 2008, the entity that's in the White House now, Barack Obama, aka Barry Soetoro, was seen by many as a savior. Now he is seen by many as a universal deceiver. He's also seen by many as a loser, playing that role to Putin's universal savior. This could very well be a dialectic that the two are playing if Obama is a long-term Russian project to bring down and destroy the American Republic from within, for which there is ample evidence. In this sense, Putin, the savior of Russia and the non-American world, is Obama, loser's handler under the long-term project to bring down America. And there are many scholars who believe this point of view. For example, Christopher Story, who has written an excellent 750-page book called The New Underworld Disorder, which people can go to my website, exopolitics.com, and you can download it there for free. The New Underworld Disorder. And if you go in there, you'll find that the FEMA camps, they go through underground tunnels under the Bering Strait to death camps in the Russian Gulag. The whole arms race between the United States and Russia is an elaborate kabuki theater charade to keep the arms production up on both sides, to keep people employed. But it's the same New World Order on both sides that even during the so-called Cold War has kept it going. So that when they talk about FEMA camps, where are they? They're in Siberia. And I suggest that people go and get Christopher Story's excellent 750-page book called The New World Disorder. Now, Vladimir Putin is doing an excellent job for the BRICS, for Brazil, Russia, India, and China and South Africa, and for the underdeveloped world, and for the people there. The target has been the United States. If you look at the background of Barry Soetoro, he his quote grandparents and mother, he's a third generation CIA operative. He comes from a third generation CIA family. It's highly doubtful that his mother was his natural mother. She was more a CIA babysitter, and his grandmother and his grandfather, his grandmother ran the bank in Honolulu that was the paymaster for all the CIA operatives in the Asian theater, starting with Ferdinand Marcos. And I've got a link there to this PowerPoint that we have put out that more than 75,000 people have read that show that the secret CIA time travel program had pre-identified a man of mixed race with the name Barack Obama as taking the oath of office on January 20th, 2009. They had pre-identified him in 1971 using secret time travel. So what they had to do was go backward, and in the intelligence trade, it's called making a legend. You had to make up somebody. They're called crisis actor. Barack Obama is a crisis actor. He's a guy that's invented to be in the White House. And that's why it's very easy for him to have been raised, by Marxist professors, to have his actual his actual autobiographies to be written by Bernardine Dorn of the Weathermen. Of the Weathermen. I mean, give me a break.
Let me ask you a question.
Yeah.
You mentioned a moment ago, you were the first to broadcast in the Soviet Union.
Yeah.
The people out there with all this inside info you have, there's a lot of people going to look and say, hey, this guy, he's got to be a member of intelligence somewhere along the way, or maybe still is.
No. I'm not. I mean, put it this way. I am, that I'm alive now, I think is a miracle. And people can read the affidavit that I filed for the May 9th, 2001 press conference at the National Press Club for the Disclosure Project, which showed that I'm essentially a writer, and I'm a journalist, and I'm a researcher, and I'm a 5-planet Gemini, and I investigate. And I just, made my way and squirreled my way and got good stories. And that's what I've done all of my life. And I'm just, sorry?
I just want to mention, I just posted that article on our website.
Oh, great.
We got all of your stuff posted up there in Exopolitics, and that we got a direct link to that Putin article. So yeah, we've kind of scratched the surface here. We've talked a lot about Illuminati, the takeover, the geopolitics of the Soviets, maybe leading back, 40, 50 years, maybe before that. So going back to your book, we haven't really discussed that a lot. The dimensional ecology of the omniverse.
Right.
You mentioned, I wrote down this a second ago. What does it matter? All this little trickling around Illuminati, New World Order. When we start talking in terms of your book, seriously, who cares about Putin and Obama? I mean, if a percentage of what you've written in that book is true, none of these guys really matter. And I guess my first question regarding your book, and try to relate this back into this whole New World Order situation we're in today, is there a group out here that is aware of these universes, parallel dimensions, and the sort? And are they using that to their benefit, or is this something that's kind of hidden knowledge, and maybe it's a very few people really know about?
You ask excellent questions. I really have to compliment you. You have asked the key question here. And one of the reasons why I wrote this book was to make public a lot of knowledge that has now been hidden, on the one hand, for many thousands of years in secret societies, both of the light and of the dark. But we have reached an age now, which is the integration of science and spirituality. And so all of these matters of the science of the cosmos, of how many universes there are in the multiverse, of the nature of the soul, what the afterlife is like, what the interlife is like, of the dimensional ecology, how we live in a dimensional ecology with a tremendous amount of interaction on a daily basis with entities from different dimensions in the spiritual dimensions, both manipulative and good, and also with a tremendous amount of intervention from extraterrestrial and interdimensional intelligence in the multiverse, ETs, both manipulatory ETs and beneficial ETs. And this is knowledge that has been kept from this planet because we have incarnated here on a particularly afflicted planet, our data shows, that has been in a universe quarantine for at least, I would say, 500,000 to 1 million years, and then has had a number of predatory ET races, starting with the Anunnaki 280,000 years ago, then the Draco reptilians and the Orion Greys about 100 years ago, attempt to take it over and form alliances with the darker military, like the Nazis, like the American military who brought in paperclip, like the kind of the world bankers, and then the people kind of forming alliances with the upper dimensional ethical ETs, like the Pleiadians, the Alpha Centaurians, who have been responsible for initially creating Homo sapiens as a 12-string DNA light being in the third dimension. Now, from an omniverse point of view, you're quite right. The omniverse being the sum of the multiverse and the spiritual dimensions. The multiverse means the totality of all universes is a term called the multiverse. Two scientists at Princeton have just issued a paper in which they showed that if you were to write out in 12-point type just the number of universes in the multiverse, which humanity can't comprehend in our minds, that number would be 260 million miles long. That's how many universes there are in the multiverse. That's how huge this thing is.
Let me pause you there for a second. Yeah. You said something there, counselor, as I cross-examined you here a minute ago. Maybe it was in your book, but maybe I just missed it.
Yeah.
You used the word quarantine on Earth. What exactly do you mean by that?
Yeah. Well, again, Earth is a complex dimensional ecology, both at a physical level, at an etheric level, and energetic level, and at a spiritual level. And what the science shows is that we are under tremendous over control. At the spiritual level, we have actual spiritual government, which is composed of the intelligent community of souls that is under the direction of spiritual entities such as advanced angels that oversee the development of intelligent civilizations on a planet, say, because life in the universe, incarnation as humans, is supposed to be for soul development. That's the purpose. And so humanity, there's numbers out of sight of inhabited planets in the multiverse and in our universe. And there's, at the spiritual level, there's oversight to make sure that that the life of intelligent creatures such as humans on Earth goes along on a pattern such that souls are not destroyed. And then also on the ET level, we're more concerned with the creation of species, like creating Homo sapiens as a primate, as opposed to creating an intelligent creature out of, say, a reptilian or a gray, which are really intelligent plants, then that would be more in the area of galactic governance, where you have galactic councils that take place more at the level of the uh, universes of time, space, energy, and matter. Take care of planetary affairs as opposed to spiritual affairs. Well, about 1,000,000 years ago or so, in our quadrant of the galaxy, there occurred a rebellion at the spiritual level against the governance, the universe governance by a series of the evolved angels. One was called Lucifer, the other Satan. And so an historical version of this, although somewhat garbled, comes down in the Old Testament and in the New Testament. And what happened at the point of the rebellion was that in order to contain it and not have it spread throughout the entire universe, the spiritual government quarantined and cut off many of the spiritual circuits and a lot of the physical circuits of this contiguous planets. I think there was 32 inhabited planets that were cut off. And as a result, in order to contain it, and this has been playing itself out since then. And you can read various accounts of the complete history of that. One of the accounts is contained in a book that you can read online called Urantia, Urantia. You can read the complete book. It's about 2,500 pages at urantia.org. Basically, from that perspective, the incarnation of one Joshua ben Joseph, otherwise known as Jesus of Nazareth, about 2,000 years ago, he was sort of an advanced trooper coming in to begin to lay claim to this planet, ending the Lucifer rebellion. And that way there was a standoff between Lucifer and Satan on earth, and Lucifer and Jesus on earth, in which he said, I offer you this planet. He said, oh, this planet's not of my, it's my kingdom is not of this earth. And so we awakening souls are kind of the follow-up of this, to take this planet out of the satanic and luciferic column into the column of light. And that's why you'll see a lot of our activities, for example, following up on the International Tribunal into Crimes of Church and State, will be following all of the common law court cases against the Vatican, the various popes, the Ninth Circle, whereby they have ritual sacrifices of newly born babies and young children as demonic sacrifices to the entities that they worship that have kept them in power. We're now bringing that out public in a judicial proceeding and then getting enforcement of that judgment, thereby showing that the British Crown, the Vatican, the papacy, the government of Canada, the Dutch Crown, the Belgian Crown are criminal organizations. And yeah, sorry.
No, you're fine. The time is running so short on us here. I've got so many questions about the book, and you're delving into stuff that I love to talk about. The situation going on there, the satanic ritual abuse in Canada. You have a lot of info on that as well. All this stuff is kind of interconnected.
Yeah.
Got into talk there. As Jamie Foxx said about talking about Lord and Saviors, our Lord and Savior Barack Obama. Going to your book. I've got something here highlighted I really want to ask you about.
Sure.
We're getting closing out here, but a lot of people may not realize this is in your book. I think it's very important. one of the headings of the chapter is just a little side note. Obama identified as having visited Mars at least twice,
Yeah.
and it being part of the DARPA project as a teenager. Can you expound on that for us? I mean, I've read this a bit, but I cannot do a good job as you. So it's very short that
Sure.
you get an
Sure.
author to give us that info. So
Yeah.
go
Yeah.
ahead.
Sure. Well, I there just again did a job as an exopolitical journalist, and I did all of this both under the aegis of exopolitics.com. I also was publishing under the Examiner um, at the time, and I spoke and had the a story uh, backed up with original sources from a number of whistleblowers, that is, people who were part of these secret programs, the secret U.S. Mars program. uh, Andrew D. Bashago, who was a lieutenant commander in the U.S. Navy that was on this program in the 1980s CIA program, who's now a member of the bar of Washington State. Bernard Mendez, who was who was a presidential advisor, who was a member of this project in the 1980s CIA Mars Jumper program. Brett Stillings, who was a lieutenant in the U.S. Navy.
No,
Sorry? Hello?
I think we're having a little bit of connection issue here.
Oh, sorry.
Oh no! I just saw something flash up red on the
Oh,
thing there.
okay.
I think we're good. So, what is the jump program? I mean,
Yeah. Now,
is that more of a remote viewing scenario? Or is that actually
no.
moving?
This is actually it's a program where a certain species of gray extraterrestrials approached the U.S. government and said, "We want to assist your going into outer space, and we're going to gift you a technology which is connected to teleportation, so that it will give you the ability, for example, to get from Earth to Mars in 15 minutes." And there was a jump room installed on the East Coast and a jump room installed on the West Coast. And so personnel of the jump room program, they were trained at a class in the summer of 1980 at the College of the Siskiyous in California, Mount Shasta. And the jump room was in Los Angeles, and it was in a building at 999 North Sepulveda, just off of LAX, Los Angeles International Airport. And the way that it was is you would get into an elevator and you would go up to the top floor as a normal elevator. And of course, this was all high security. You could not get into that floor of the elevator unless you had been cleared and unless you had been trained. And then the elevator went up one more floor, and then you were cleared, and then you went back into the elevator. Then both ends of the elevator was sealed, and the elevator went through a conversion process there in place, and it converted into a teleportation unit. Then for the next 20 minutes, you and whoever else was with you, you could only wear clothes that were made out of cloth. You could not have any metal components in your pockets or on your belts or anything. You would teleport through a time vortal tunnel for about 15 to 20 minutes. Then all of a sudden that would stop, and then the other door would open, and you would open into the other end of the teleport, which was on Mars. and you'd be greeted there by people. Generally, these were on the surface of Mars. They had been built into sculptures that are on Mars that look like some of the pre-9500 BC solar system catastrophe sculptures, which are these gigantic skulls. Then at that time, in the early 1980s, there were kind of these rudimentary projects. This is in the equatorial region of Mars, which is dominated by humans. We've also spoken to Marine Captain Randy Kramer, who spent 17 years in Mars at the polar regions, which are dominated by intelligent reptilian and insectoid, where they had more of a battle situation and controlled, armed conflict, and then kind of a, DMZ, the demilitarized zone kind of situation.
Let me take you back for just 1 second.
Yeah.
You mentioned this training facility was at Mount Shasta. I'm not really in this genre, but I do know there's a lot of spiritual things. People go out there. Mount Shasta is a big gathering for a lot of folks out there. Was there any significance to that training facility being there at Mount Shasta?
Well, as I understand it, Mount Shasta is a great opening to the inner earth, the Agarthians. So if you go to Mount Shasta, you have an intersection of a lot of underground activities. Number one, you have the portals to the inner earth and the inner earth humans that are the Agarthians. Number two, you have underground extraterrestrial bases, and you can see, spacecraft coming in and out. Number three, you have deep underground bases of the military and time travel facilities. And at this, and number four, then you would have specialized intelligence training, operations and education with selected civilians, like the Mars jumper program, where they were taking, say, 18 very bright 18-year-olds, about 20 to 25 very bright 18-year-olds, including Barry Soetoro, the future Barack Obama, Brett Stillings.
Wait, no, hold on a second. You said very bright. Is that really the case? Is he really a bright guy? Sometimes I wonder about this. I see some of the things that he seems to be a puppeteer. Is it a matter of being controllable or being very bright?
Barack Obama is very bright. I'll give you an anecdote. One of the exercises that they had to do during this training in 1980, and three people were chosen for it: Barack Obama, Regina Dugan, who's now a high executive with Google, who was the first woman head of DARPA, and Lieutenant Commander Andy Basiago. And they were each given an enormous report, which was from Trench Intelligence, which was, do the Martian civilization present a threat to the U.S.? Because an early U.S. astronaut had gotten stranded on Mars earlier, I think back in the 60s, and the U.S. had asked the Martians for help, and the Martians had let the U.S. die. And so each one of those had to prepare a paper for it and defend it to a panel. And, Obama, according to Andy Basiago, was very cagey and very bright, that the guy is brilliant and he's a manipulator. And those are all the qualities that you need to be a matrix political leader that managed to get all the electoral victories that he's gotten since.
Quick question for you while we're on the president thing. You're a man who spent some time at Yale. Let's talk about Skull and Bone just for a minute. This is up your book. Do you have any experience with that while you were there? I imagine that's the talk of the school there. If you're
Yeah.
in that club,
Well,
you
yeah, yeah,
keep
yeah. I
up
mean,
those.
they, the, I see that we have very little time, so I'll go very, very quickly. The public story of Skull and Bone is that they were founded in 1832 as a chapter of the Brotherhood of Death in Germany. In fact, they were founded in 1776 as a second chapter of the Bavarian Illuminati that was founded by Adams Weishaupt, a Jesuit, in 1775. And they were founded then in 1776 as part of the American Revolution, because the American Revolution was, like the French Revolution, an Illuminati project. And since then, Skull and Bones essentially has run the United States and was an instrument for running Bolshevism. It financed Bolshevism at the start of the Russian Revolution, when Bolshevism was a fringe faction. Uh, uh, Harrison gave the Bolsheviks, through Brown Brothers Harriman, the plates to make U.S. dollars, and that's how they financed them. And in concert with the Rothschilds, who brought over Lenin, and then through George W. Bush's grandfather, Prescott Bush, starting in 1923 through the Fritz Thyssen Bank, they finance Hitler. So they control communism, they control fascism, and they control hypercapitalism, and that's Skull and Bones. If you look at the history of Yale, Skull and Bones has always been, trying to take over Yale, terrorizing the Yale faculty. When I was at Yale, my last year, I was tapped by an underground society called Torch and Talon. We rented, out of our own funds, a beach house out at the beach in Branford, Connecticut there, where we met twice a week as kind of a psychological discussion group, and we told each other, we shared our lives, and we were kind of a men's support group. I heard that secret society was disbanded, but Skull and Bones is a diabolical secret society, a branch of the Jesuits.
Wow, I mean that's fascinating stuff. I've got a million more questions for you, sir. You've been so kind with your time. And your book
Sure.
is, dimensional ecology of the omniverse is it's out there, man. I started reading this thing, and I had to reread some of it a couple of times. It's got so much information. And last question for you, not really a
Sure.
question, I'm just going to throw this to you. There's a section in there you give a great description of a lot of different, I would use the term alien, extraterrestrial beings.
Right.
I mean, you go through a different reptoids, insects. I mean, there's
Yeah.
graves and stuff like that. I mean, so how did you come across this information? And
Okay. No. Sure.
how do you feel
Well,
comfortable about it?
no. Right. That is a exophenotype, and that was work that my colleagues in the Exopolitics Institute have been crucial in developing, and that's available online at exopedia.org. And what I did is I took that basic information and then put it inside of the framework of the dimensional ecology of the omniverse hypothesis, so that now we know how the different exophenotypes fit inside the context of the universes. They are avatars for our deeper souls to incarnate into, and they are created both by consortia of upper dimensional extraterrestrials and groups of intelligent souls. Part of the duty of souls in the interlife is not only to prepare for incarnations, but souls as a group, the intelligent civilization of souls, in concert with spiritual beings and Source itself, God, collectively actually create the universes and the multiverse. They collectively act as God because our individual souls are actually holographic fragments of source. They're like eggs of light from a vast sea of light. And the principle of a hologram is that the whole is in each part of the hologram. So the whole of God is inside of each of us, and collectively we're all involved in creating the reality that we're in. And each of us most probably has had incarnations as reptilians, as bird people in a avian planet, as fish people in a fish planet, as cat people, as dog people.
All right, so I lied. Okay, one more question for you before we finish out. This is, of course, author of Dimensional Ecology of the Omniverse. We have all those links at conspiracy.com right there for you. So where is this going? I mean, this whole thing. We've got Illuminati, like I mentioned earlier. I mean, what is the end game here? Is there there was one of the last pieces I read in the book was I think there was stage 7. It was like where you know all, you are all. Maybe I'm putting this in a little bit of a box. Is that what every individual soul is going to be at one point in the future?
Yeah. Well, there are actually a couple of questions within the question that you asked. As individual souls and as a collective, we're moving through what are called densities of consciousness, or various dimensions of consciousness, so that we're gaining more and more awareness and access to more and more knowledge, because in the end, we're going to be creating our own universes, which we actually do in the intralife. In other words, the vision that was given to us was to be part of the collective that's really creating this vast multiverse that we are a part of. We're like, quote, gods in the making, as Edgar Cayce said. So that's part of our destiny here. With regard to the particular question that you asked, where is the particular play going here on Earth? I think that we are in a transition toward a utopia rather than a dystopia, and probably decades down the line will be a planet that is much more approximating a paradise on Earth rather than a hell on Earth.
Wow. Yeah. I hope that's true. Alfred Lambremont. We've got your site linked up on our site, exopolitics.com. We've also got your article linked up there, and the book linked to Amazon. I guess that's the best place to purchase your newest book, correct? I mean,
yeah.
You have a particular location you'd rather people to go to?
Yeah, no, you can go to that one, is exopolitics.com, and there you can access everything.
All right, sir. I appreciate you joining us tonight. Maybe we can have you back on in the near future, because I've got more questions about this book.
Sure.
I'm still trying to get through it myself. It's some of it's above my head, but I like reading it, and I like talking to you, and you're a great man. I appreciate you joining us tonight. Have a good night. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much. Good night.
Okay.